Well, hi everybody, this is the Planet Earth here. I have a custom modded Alienware BIOS. Now, this BIOS is for the R3 2016 version, the one that's not overclockable. So this BIOS allows me to overclock the shit out of my Alienware. So my stock CPU is a HQ processor, and this one forces it to allow it to overclock. So right now I'm at 3 gigahertz. I'm not going to go any higher than that because I don't trust it. But the temperatures are running good as long as I keep high performance fan mode on. When I want to downclock it, then I can go back to non-high performance fan mode. Right now I'm getting 90 frames per second with every setting maxed out except for grass is not on ultra. And advanced is not on at all because this is only a 4 gigabyte version of the 980 card. But to receive over 90 frames per second, I would say this is the best gaming laptop at the moment. I don't think there's any other Alienwares or any other type of laptops that are gaming to get over 60 frames per second on GTA with every setting maxed out except for I don't have MSAA on, but I do have FXAA on because MSAA just destroys frames. So right now the overclock is on 135 plus 135 and plus 300 on memory and high performance fan mode, and the RAM is overclocked to 2667 megahertz from stock. So with all this overclocking, this is the best that I can get with GTA 5 on a 4GB NVIDIA GTX 980 graphics card mobile from an Alienware R3 2016 version. And this is with a modded BIOS that I found on the internet. I'm not going to share the modded BIOS with people unless they really want it, because this thing's already overheated about 3 times and shut off. But since I turned the CPU, the fan performance mode on, it seems to have stopped that, obviously. So right now, GTA is running every single thing at full everything, except for Ultra Grass. And when I turn Ultra Grass on, I don't get as many good frames per second. I dip down into the 50s, but everything else is Ultra. For some reason, I'm running through the grass. It seems to go better than when I'm in the city for some reason. Usually it's the opposite, but lately it's the opposite, so I don't know what's going on here. I get higher frames per second in the grass than I do here. But this is GTA at Ultra settings on an Alienware. Good to remember though, this is every setting maxed out except for grass. It's not ultra, it's only very high. Post FX is on ultra. Tessellation, everything is on. So now let's just play the game for a few minutes here. I'd rather record it through the cell phone camera so I can show you that I'm actually playing on an Alienware laptop. And it's not connected to an amplifier. There's no amp on it. This is the mobile graphics processor overclocked, stock overclock. It's not like a custom overclock. But the Alienware is an insane laptop, can do over 60 frames per second in most areas of GTA 5, and can do over 80 frames per second, seems to be in the country of GTA 5. I just pissed off the officers. They're going to be coming for me soon. But over 60 frames per second, I just dropped down to 59. But you gotta remember, this is every setting. I don't want to stay in the 50s, I want to stay in the 60s. That's the reason why I kept it. But if you had it on very high, or high actually, you would do pretty good. Honestly. You'd be over the hundreds, like insane over the hundreds. But then again, nobody wants to play GTA 5 at those settings. But you gotta remember that everything is overclocked except... Actually, everything is overclocked. The CPU is overclocked to 3 gigahertz, which is 300 megahertz. 9, 400 megahertz faster than it should be. 7, 8, 9, yeah, it's 400 megahertz faster. I won't go higher than that. I was at 3.3 gigahertz, but this thing just got over too hot. And even with the fans on, it got too hot too fast. But 3 gigahertz seems to be a good thing, and I haven't seen the temperature spike at all with high performance mode on. So we're getting 60 frames per second. Oh shit. F off with your stupid PD. Fuck off, police. Man, they won't leave me alone. Fuck it. I'll better put cheats. Alright, let's go ahead and do cheats. Time to go away. That all unnecessary screaming. Jesus. 70 frames per second. 80. Also on Crysis 3 with the overclock enabled and the graphics enabled and the CPU overclocked, I'm actually able to pull about 78 frames per second max on all HD settings. Witcher 3, I'm able to pull a steady 68 frames per second with the NVIDIA Hairworks. But that's it. Not more than 60 frames. No, I never hit 70 with everything enabled. Now, if I turn NVIDIA Hairworks off, I get about 73 frames per second on Witcher. Now, you can't tell me that's not pretty good for a 2.6 gigahertz processor and one NVIDIA GTX 980 graphics card mobile. Remember, the clock is not as high as it is on a desktop version. But I think that is pretty freaking good. And I think Alienware needs to rethink their non-overclocking Alienware laptops. I don't like not being able to test my laptop fully even if I break it. But with this high performance mode, I mean, I'm getting 100 frames per second in this area. I think that's pretty good. You can't tell me that's not good for all Ultra HD settings except for grass. Also, to get a little bit better frames per second, I went into the settings of NVIDIA, put high performance on, prefer maximum performance. That seemed to give it a few frames of speed. But playing over 90 frames per second on 1080p, I think that's pretty good for a 1080p only laptop. Now, if this was the 4K version, I would have the 8GB NVIDIA, but I don't really want that or need that. I'm happy to be playing GTA 5 without lag. But for a laptop, I mean, in most grassy areas, I'll probably get about 70. Oops. See, right now I'm in the 80s, 90s. You should see my friend's desktop, though. He upgraded his motherboard and processor. He finally got an iCore 7. He used to be stuck with a Xeon processor, but he finally upgraded to the iCore 7. And he got 64 gigabytes of DDR4 memory. And his computer can play GTA 5 with absolute everything, even overclocking, even overdoing the video cards on 2 NVIDIA GTX 980s. He's pulling almost 80 frames per second with absolutely every setting enabled, maxed, full, everything. And overclocking, he gets about 85 to 95 frames per second with everything enabled at absolute max settings. Every single setting, advanced and in there, is at max settings. And that's just not even maximum performance. Plus, he's got multiple monitors, and and that's not bad. He's getting over 100, and I think I was playing with his computer. He's getting over 150 frames per second in the grassy areas, and in the city, he's getting over 130 frames per second. And those are 2 NVIDIA GTX 980s. One is Superclock, but those are not 980 Ti's. Now, we haven't tested 4K yet, but every game that you could throw at it, I'm sure is going to be over 100 frames per second. But right now, I'm getting 84. This is a super overclocked R3 version of an Alienware. And F Dell, I don't give a shit about them. They can all kiss my ass. Because you can overclock it slightly and get way better performance. Before this, I was only getting about 50 frames per second. and about maybe 60 frames per second in some of the areas. But this thing is not getting hot anymore with a high fan performance mode. And I'm just not allowing myself to be limited by the Alienware's limit this by not allowing overclocking to happen. And I was only getting about 40 to 55 frames per second max with everything enabled. Well, that was everything though. You know, with that BIOS, the latest BIOS that they had, this one's a modded version. With the overclock of 400 megahertz faster, let's see, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, 400 megahertz faster. And then with the GPU overclocked to about 1.230 gigahertz, 1.2300 megahertz. And the memory overclocked by about 350 megahertz. Or hertz, I'm not exactly sure which one it was. I think it's megahertz. This is the kind of performance I'm receiving. With everything enabled to max settings. So, like I said, if you are curious on how I'm getting these kind of frames per second, see, I'm dropping down to 60, but this is everything maxed. Except for grass. Grass is the only bitch. The grass is the only one. I have that on very high instead of ultra. But if I put it on ultra, I'll dip down into the 50s. I just don't want to go into the 50s. Now, if I disable a couple of other settings, I'll easily be over 100 frames per second in GTA. But I like the quality of the game, so I keep them enabled. Like the water is ultra. You know, everything's ultra, just except for the grass. I mean, I could deal with 70 frames per second, but I like to see how good it works on this. You know, 60 frames per second I can deal with, but it drops down into the 50s if I put ultra grass. Oh, shit. Whoopsie. Keep going. Keep going. Damn. Screw. Oh, look, I'm getting 100. Look at that. I'm getting 100 and... Shit. 100 and... Oh, yeah, I can jump like that. I forgot. 130 frames per second in some areas. I just bumped up to over 100 frames per second. Now I'm at 90. That's pretty good still. See, I told you, this is an insane laptop. Okay, the potential is there, it's just Alienware doesn't care. Oh, that rhymed. The potential is there, they just don't care. That's a good one. Bus stop. It's like a bus park, actually. Let me get a bus out. Alright. Okay, let's get a bus out. Alright, let's get a bus. Oh, oops. So what do you guys think of this extreme overclock on an Alienware that's not supposed to be overclocked? If you guys can tell me what you feel. So I'm getting 60 frames per second. It might drop down to the 50s. There's 50s. That's what I don't like. But you got to remember how intense the GTA game works. But in most areas I do get over 60. But like I said, you have to remember, this is all good settings here, so...
Hey, you got off lucky, homie.
80 frames per second in some areas, 60 frames per second in others. So if you guys like this overclock, give the video a like. Thank you guys for watching. This has been the Planet Earth here. Putting a modded BIOS up on the R3 version of Alienware. And overclocking the crap out of it. And now look, this is like desktop grade performance. Thank you guys for watching. This has been the Planet Earth here.